welcome you to this event. It's a near full house. We've seen exciting faces, old and new associates, previous presidents, previous members of board, mentors, colleagues, friends, mentees. We're pretty excited, to have everyone here. Thank you so much for coming. We'll get started in a moment. I'd like to do the introduction of our speaker tonight, our president, Ousseina Alidou, who's going to give the presidential lecture. Ousseina D. Alidou is full professor in the Department of African, Middle Eastern, and South Asian Languages and Literatures and Comparative Literature at Rutgers University, New Brunswick. She is the incoming director of Rutgers Center for Women's Global Leadership. She's Rutgers University Academic Director of the Mandela Washington Young Fellowship, yearly civic leadership. She's also a theoretical linguist and cultural critic whose research focuses on women's agency in African Muslim societies in the Sahel and East Africa. She explores gendered discourses of citizenship and rights, gender education, politics, and leadership. She's published many books. She's the author of Engaging Modernity, Muslim Women and the Politics of Agency in Post-Colonial Niger. She was a runner-up of Ido Schneider Book Prize of Women's Caucus of the Association of African Studies. And she also published Muslim Women in Post-Colonial Kenya, Leadership, Representation, Political Agency, and Social Change. There's so many things I'd like to read through, but I'm going to, jump to what she has been to us at the ASA. Ousseina has been a member of the ASA since 1994. Her other previous appointments and services on the organization includes being chair of the All African Studies program in the years 2009 and 2011. She directed the Center for African Studies at Rutgers University. Oh no, we are back to other services now. So I'm just simply going to turn to Ousseina, who has been preparing assiduously for this moment. She's prepared a wonderful, fantastic lecture for us titled African Studies, Present, Futures, and Forging Common Grounds, Languages, Scripts, and Translation. Please join me in welcoming Ousseina Alidou to the podium.
I love you all. Thank you. Mwah.
I don't want to leave either, so I'm just going to...
Yes, please. Asheo, Sister Aderonke Adesanya, thank you for your generous introduction. I'm very humbled by your generous introduction. I'm very humbled to see us, each one of you, after several years of not being together. I'm grateful. I'm grateful for the divine. It is in every name, Yahweh, Allah, Oludumare, all the gods. I thank the gods and our ancestors and nature for allowing us to be here in peace, together, with love and friendship, with empathy. I'm very grateful. I'm grateful to each person, each community that has allowed me to be here today with you. I'm grateful to the staff of the ASA Secretariat, our new director, Executive Director, Alex Saba, Where are you? I love you. Yeah. You stick with us in hard time, and that's why we know the way of love and commitment. Thank you, Alex. And thank you, Catherine Saluka, also with Infinity, with your company, for being here with us. And thank you all the colleagues from Marriott, Jay, Ibrahim, and your friend up there, helping me with this technology. It's one thing to use the technology, it's another thing to be competent in it. I'm humble and grateful. Thank you so much. I'm grateful to everybody who has fed us throughout. Those who clean our rooms, those who bring waters, those who at the registration welcome us, those who drive the train, the flight, everybody, and people at home who wish us well as we come here. Thank you. I will not have been here without the grace of God, of my parents, those who give birth to me, but who I did not have a chance to know because they have departed early. So I'm grateful to them for giving birth to me and my twin sister, Ambassador Professor Ousseina Alidou. I speak always in plural because I am a twin, and she's always present in me as I'm present in her. And thanks to our grandmother, we were able to live the early stages as orphan. But my grandmother, our grandmother told us, never believe you are an orphan, because if you know to open your eyes and your heart, you will see the way of love. And the way of love comes in every color, in every religion, in every space. You just need to know how to embrace it, how to read it, how to translate it. It does not matter in which language, in which geography. When you see love, embrace love and amplify it and share it. So because of that, I'm going to welcome a new friend who said this is the first time she's coming to ASA from Denmark, Anna. I have been raised by everybody here. I have my mentors since I was in undergraduate in Niger Republic. And I call them my sisters. They're here. Some of them were past ASA president, like Professor Pearl Robertson. There's Professor Barbara Cooper. There's Professor Antoinette Tijani, my sisters. There's Niger is very represented here. There is Dr. Adel Bari, who is here. There is Balkisa Diallo. So I'm mentioning Niger here. There is Windy Wilson Fire. I'm mentioning because I said common ground. What does it mean to be the first Africa-born, continental-born, and from non-English speaking Africa, from the Sahel, Niger, to be the first ASA president? That's what it means. So I thank you. I'm very humble. But this would not have been possible without those like the Africa America Institute that says it is good, it is a great idea to give these twins the opportunity to come and do their PhDs in the US. And for our professors right there in Niger to have led the struggle for decolonial knowledge production and say, yes, they don't speak English, but if given the opportunity, they will just do right. So this is the journey. So I'm grateful to those professors, all my professors from Niger, Professor Abdou Hamani, Professor Mary White Kaba, Professor Paul Newman from Indiana University, and Professor Roxana Newman, and Boston University, Professor John Hutchison, Professor Jennifer Yonko, and it goes on and on. And at the University of Illinois, Professor Eyamba Bokamba, welcome my twin sister, and welcome me, and Professor Kisworth, and many others, Professor Kashru. So when I say common ground, it's what it takes for me to be this journey. Rutgers University is present here. It has been like 22 years. All my sisters and brothers are here, from the vice president of Rutgers Global to the funding director of Rutgers, Vice President Rick Garfunkel, funding director of the Center for African Studies, Rick Schroeder, and ASA President, my dada, grandson, Dorothy Hudson, ASA President, to be here. You know, it means a lot. Rutgers is very present. I have my brother, Stefan Roblin. I have my sister, Meg Arenberg, and many, many others. Each person has been part of this journey. And everyone who comes from Wisconsin, I see Reginald from Wisconsin comes when we do global humanities to come. Many of you have mentored me. And Africa Institute is here with Salah Hassan and my sister Aderonke. Each one of you, I thank you. So I know I have 50 minutes. I will not be on the way of dinner, but I think it's more important that I say a note of gratitude to translate it, to see what it means when you give the opportunity for someone who does not speak English, but who spoke several African languages, who reads so many other scripts, like Arabic scripts, like Ajami. I thank my brother Falun Gong, my professors who said Ajami matter, because to translate, to be in dialogue with the world, for Africa to be in dialogue, we need African conversations in other scripts and other philosophies, other epistemologies. My grandmothers were writing in Tifinagh. They were writing in Ajami, in several languages. So what does it mean to do feminist studies or global humanities when we do not include those who do not operate with Latinization? We write with gaps in the archives. But today I want to concentrate, therefore, on really solidarity, act of solidarity, through really looking at what does it mean to do diversity and inclusion by broadening region, geographies, histories, present futures in a way that lessen and provide healings for the wounds of the past, for which we were not there, but we are still bearing the burden. Let's break the walls. Let's free ourselves. Let's embrace each other. Let's diversify different understanding through multidisciplinarity, transdisciplinarity, and interdisciplinarity, and the opportunity to open doors for that one which is so alien, but we create space, the same way you have created space for Ousseina to be here with you. My daughter just said, I like purple. The background of this presentation was for some color. Salma here, Mazrui, gave me. She's the Rutgers too. So thank you, Salma. I'm grateful. So I want to talk about the ways Africa was being represented. So during the global pandemic, there was a biomedical pandemic. The idea is Africa is seen, if there is a biomedical pandemic, that this is a site where Africans are going to die and there is no knowledge and no possibilities. This is a way of also looking at the injustice of even how one anticipates where death is, the site of death. This is a problem. And we have been consciously or unconsciously participants in that way of ordering Africa and marginalizing and contributing to the alienation of how mainstream media alienate African scientific contribution, humanistic contributions, and performances. So in what seems an endless health catastrophe all over the world, the outbreak of COVID-19 pandemic in March 2020 has imposed a global stillness, a rethinking of the ethics of sharing the common world in an era of violence and racial reckoning, neoliberal extractivism, capitalism, climate vulnerability, and mass refugees, migrant movement. Throughout the COVID pandemic to the present, the continent of Africa was still declaring vaccine inequality and still declaring vaccine inequity in the face of global North vaccine nationalism. However, since the outbreak, Africans are actively contributing to scientific and artistic innovations that need global highlighting against the underreporting by hegemonic global North media broadcasting networks, and significant contribution to the process of decolonizing fields of knowledge and their practical applications. In this dialogue, my aim is to examine the ways in which global local African artists mobilize non-hegemonic epistemological reasonings to shape a poetics of care, musical performances, disseminated through digital mobile phones and other social media platforms during the COVID-19 pandemic period that speaks to marginalized rural and urban populations living in precarious material conditions because of the imposition of destructive neoliberal economic policies enabled by political elite. Their poetic narratives and performances are framed within an ethics of life affirmation that center on life-saving messages that put into dialogue the biomedical, the cosmological, and the affective. By appropriating digital media space and radio and television broadcasting platforms and using dialogism, multilingualism, inclusive of African languages and African scripts from Europe and Asia, and code switching as a lingua franca in their musical performances, the African global local artists once again contribute not only to the fight against a biomedical pandemic, but also the struggle against other global pandemics of dispossession affecting African societies and global African diasporas. Through critical literacy and artistic performances building on intercultural translations, the African global local artists are contributing to decolonizing the public health discipline, medical field, and media studies in their interpretation, their representation of Africa's epistemic contributions to the epidemiological challenges faced by humanity in the 21st century, using case studies from popular culture and youth artistic performances in Niger, northern Nigeria, China, US, the African and other African diasporas. I examined the discursive alterity to an action against neoliberal alterity to neoliberal solution to both the biomedical and social pandemics that African youth artists offer. So in the previous keynote address by Professor Amina Mama in her distinguished lecture, she's talking about for us to open eyes to other epistemic communities. I'm focusing on youth, hip-hop artists, and other artists who have stepped in to assist medical doctors and public health practitioners and communities in disseminating healthy messages. Global Humanities Archives of COVID-19 pandemic and other social pandemics ought to include the scientific and multilingual and scriptural artistic contributions of African and African diaspora youth in the world to the stories of our common losses and present and future survival. I just want to quickly, where is the gadget? I don't see the gadget. Okay. So I may not, I just, yeah. So I just quickly want to give you the representation, the African contributions. These are a medical doctor one, here in the US, and a journalist in England. So one is Dr. Ngozi Ezekwe, and this information comes to me and Professor Caroline Brown when we were trying to organize really knowledge from African community. And my dearest friend, esteemed colleague, Professor Lara Smith, sent this story in the coverage for New York Times. Coronavirus Diary is available. It is by our really esteemed, wonderful journalist. We know her with several programs on UNESCO Africa Broadcasting. This is Zainab Badawi. And she's an Afro-diasporic based from Sudan, based in London. So her work is very important. And there are many other cases like this. And so I want to go into the corpus I use. These are UNESCO, all of a sudden, so the importance of African languages, and then but who are promoters of African languages and who can step in and contribute to assist medical doctors and health practitioners in the places where government are not available, do not even understand where to start with this pandemic. So I would like to give you an example of how these contributors to the UNESCO projects from again, Niger. Aissatou Aliou is a sociologist by training, but a hip-hop artist who reached out to other artists. Some of them are even medical doctors, but they're hip-hop artists in several languages to try to appease the trauma that the information of the COVID-19 has unleashed and how to handle that.
Lokaci yayi da za mu yi nazari da lahiya ita uwar shiki ce kuma ba mai fushi da ita.
So it is available. And so this is from Niger, their diversity of languages and actors. I want to play the second one from China. These are medical doctors, students, who are studying at the theater of the pandemic. Some of them are from Ghana, from Gabon, from Cameroon. So imagine the African presence in the very field of biomedical and trying to use hip-hop as a way of communicating to communities in the African, on the continent to say, we are African children in the theater of the pandemic, and we want to reassure you how to deal with the pandemic. So this is one of the ways I am arguing that the scientific contribution of Africans have to be understood beyond a specific geography. It is a planetary intervention, right? So these are medical doctors. Imagine myself, I have been a refugee of structural adjustment. When I finished my PhD, I wanted to go back to Niger to contribute. But that is the time where the World Bank and IMF said the African continent does not need higher education. It needs just basic education. So I had to find a job somewhere else, right? So, but just like the way African students in Ukraine were medical students, these ones are in China, the same way like my story. So I just... I wanted to play. Oops, so sorry, I wanted to. So I give you different type of data because I want to go to the paper, really. This is another in Nigeria, in Hausa language. learn. And then, so some use the secular, and some use hip-hop, some use the religious. You have a diversity, and in their narrative, they're talking about also the violence unleashed by the state as when the lockdown take place. So you have even the NSAR. When you listen to the narratives, you have information about the biomedical pandemic, but you have also the pandemic of state violence. You have the pandemic of gender-based violence, the pandemic of economic injustice and scarcity, the social pandemic of refugee and mass migration production in the face of climate inequalities and injustices and displacement by extractive industries. So you also have other narratives, like, okay, this data that gives us an idea using humor, as one of my colleagues will say, humor as a radical politics, right? Professor Simfrey Makoni, linguist, would say the pandemic has enriched also humor as a critique of what it means to have a health infrastructure dismantled and then have to face COVID-19 pandemic. And then to face also many of African elites, African political leaders who travels to global north, global east for medical practice, etc. So humor has been used, different type of narrative. So I want to go back to suggest, can pandemic in Africa, popular music and public health mobilization, can entertainment education impact health behavior? Is the empirical question that many scholars researching epidemics in African countries examine in the insightful interdisciplinary book of the same title, edited by Chima Onukwe. In the book forward, Arvind Singhal, a world-renowned pioneer specialist of entertainment education communication, incisively observed. For millennia, the griot and their countless counterparts on the African continent have purposely utilized the crowd engaging process of storytelling, music, and drama for instruction, agitation, devotion, and reformation. In recent years, more mass-mediated forms of entertainment education have emerged on the continent that utilize popular genres in radio, television, popular music, film, and interactive digital media. This new platform, combined with the old and traditional forms, reach and millions of audience members with life-saving and life-changing information on a daily basis. They help spark conversations in hitherto taboo topics such as HIV and other pandemics, guiding positive decisions and action that may help people to live safer, happier, and healthier lives. In Africa, like in other parts of the global south, pandemic cannot be managed through only Western biomedical approaches alone, as the work of Ellen Foley has rightly done when looking at health issues in Senegal. And also, so a successful public health strategy must include an awareness of African languages, understanding of diseases, the affective social body, health, healing, and well-being, along with vernacular communication strategies in local languages that resonate with the targeted communities. This is a crucial enterprise because most African societies approach illness and healing through pluralistic medicinal approaches, including both herbal medicine and cosmological belief. Furthermore, in the African context where the majority of the population are not literate in European languages and are deprived of environmental literacy, it becomes imperative to speak out quickly to seek out quickly those vernacular communicators who are the most effective in promoting critical life-saving health information in local languages. In this regard, African traditional and modern storytellers, griot and griots, poets, singers, visual and performing artists are the most effective group to assist doctors and public health workers in combating epidemics and the COVID-19 pandemic. Indeed, as ethnologist Roofstone rightly argues, with regard to the 2014 fight against the Ebola epidemics in West Africa, quote, song was a pivotal part of the Ebola response in Liberia, and it should be examined more closely for future epidemics. The efficacy of interdisciplinary collaboration between art and medicine is well exemplified by the groundbreaking work conducted by the Center of Arts in Medicine at the University of Florida, the Johns Hopkins Center for Communication Program, and I'm really grateful for having read the work of Professor Charles Didier Gondola, who has joined now Johns Hopkins University, and also Dr. Adel Fatouma Bari from Niger, who is both a medical doctor working on infectious diseases and who is also a writer and a poet who advances health literacy in so many ways. So these centers, and then the Harvard University Medical School, which collaborate with other programs around the world, including in African countries, such as South Africa, Wits University, and Makerere University. The international collaborative programs on health communication focus on the critical role of artists, storytellers, and performers in their creative production of stories that disseminate health literacy that aims to prevent the spread of global pandemic viruses, such as polio, HIV, Ebola virus, and now many more other pandemics, unfortunately, including the COVID-19 pandemic, through behavioral change in millions of people, especially the younger audience. The art in medicine, curricular training of medical students and public and global health students at the aforementioned institutions in the United States and in Africa include medical humanities courses focused on storytelling, spiritual drama, visual arts, and music and dance performances for the health awareness and healing practices. In fact, the University of Florida, in collaboration with the University of Nairobi and the Makerere University, offer both an online graduate certificate and a master in art in medicine for both artists and health practitioners, professionals. The inspiring, innovative incorporation of African-American hip-hop culture by Professor Olajide Williams, a neuroscientist from Columbia University, in effort to advance public health in New York and the privileged minority communities affected by healthcare disparities, is worth mentioning because of its successful impact. In fact, the success of Dr. William Hip Hop Public Health Foundation in promoting health literacy and health behavior changes in the digital accessibility of its program has led to its national and global replicability. With Dr. Williams' philosophical vision of integrating vernacular communication strategies from African and African diaspora communities in advancing public health to promote minority health in the US is endorsed by other African diasporic scientists who are members of his foundation, including Professor Benga Ogedegbe, Chief of the Division of Health and Behavior, Director of the Center for Helpful Behaviors Change in the Department of Population Health at NYU School of Medicine, and an appointed member of the US Preventive Service Task Force. Both Professor Olajide Williams and Professor Obenga Ogedegbe are physicians, clinical researchers, and world-renowned public health experts who are members of the Association of Nigerian Physicians in the US, in the Americas. They are both working with African and African diaspora artists and other vernacular communication specialists who to promote a public health and global health agenda in Nigeria and other African countries within the African continent and among African diasporic communities beyond the United States. Given the transnational and global migration flow of people and diseases, public health awareness messaging through artistic consumption will be an important strategy for reaching out to millions of African communities and Afro descent throughout the world and other humanities throughout the world, because their work is just very important. I want to go back to the question of the contribution of the African students in China. What the song, why they intervene with the song, and how we should look at it in our process of decolonizing knowledge. As the growing pandemic began engendering social tension, African song composers, singers, and musicians adopted both local and Afropolitan anti-racist ethics in their double role of local and world citizens by showing solidarity with global communities, especially with China, where the virus allegedly started, and with the Asian people as they began to experience racism and violent assault in some countries. For example, Akwete David Papa Mercy Song, a student from Ghana studying medicine at Wenzhou University, was among the first African artists based in China studying medicine who composed a solidarity rap song that was made available on YouTube and dedicated to all Chinese. And he entitled his song, Percy Fight Against the Pandemic. Another song worth mentioning and also available in YouTube is Strong Together, We Defeat Corona, composed by another Ghanaian lead singer and performed by a Nigerian rapper, a Nigerian pianist, three students studying at Liucheng University, Shandong, China. This song too went viral within the second of its digital posting on television network and on YouTube, with 92,960 viewers as of February 26, 2020, when it was posted. The political stance of African students studying in China is a decolonial anti-racist mobilization for a world solution against COVID-19 pandemic as they resist xenophobia and racism. Their song underscore global connectivity, mobility, and diasporic hospitality, as some of the lyrics passages remind their interlocutors. Ghanaian singer DJ Titanium, with background rappers from Gabon and Nigeria, is shown on YouTube performing the solidarity song, so it's one of the elements. The corpus I examine. When asked about the motivation behind their song, Usman Abdullahi, a Nigerian student at Liucheng University, responded, "Actually, the motivation behind the song is that a lot of people are scared. You see a lot of people discriminating like they are running from other people who are Asian looking. So this is what motivated us to write the song about the coronavirus. So to show people that the coronavirus is the common enemy. The coronavirus is the enemy, so let's fight that enemy." That is the motivation behind the song. Everything is getting better here, especially in the city where I live, Liucheng. According to the student leader, there are no new cases recorded, end of quote. From the above quote, explaining the motivation of their song, West African students studying in China took the ethical stand of identifying the coronavirus as the enemy that transcends racial, religious, class, and geographical national borders. Furthermore, their Afropolitan hip-hop ethics led them to assert their solidarity with the common people and the doctors of China and underscore China as their second home, notwithstanding the wide digital coverage of the racial discrimination that Africans and Black people are facing in China. This ethical recognition of China as their second home in their role as global migrant students and traders is discursively conveyed through the use of linguistic code switching in their song. The songs of solidarity against the 2020 coronavirus pandemic by the African students studying medicine in China employ code switching in Chinese to express their solidarity with the common Chinese people while reverting to West African Standard English and West African Pidgin English to inscribe the ethics beyond verbal aesthetics in similar fashion to what Fela Kuti, the late iconic Nigerian musician, did in his Afrobeat music, as he distanced himself from standard English used by the political elite. In addition to code switching with Chinese, they also code switch between West African Standard English and West African Pidgin English to mark themselves distinctively as Global South English speakers who are Nigerians and Ghanaians living, studying, and earning a living in China. Plurilingual code switching in West African English variety, West African Pidgin, and Chinese language and African languages also reveal these cosmopolitan African youth ethics mode of breaking away from hegemonic monolingualism and singular thinking about a solution to a global coronavirus pandemic and racism. Rather than focusing only on the issue of racism that Africans face in China or in any other place in the world, as a retaliatory approach, African students and artists opt to use their creative agency to highlight the good in their diasporic African experience in China, in the United States, in Europe, in Arab countries, in Asia, other Asian countries, India, everywhere, and urge their audience to show compassion in the face of COVID-19 pandemic, while also imparting the life-saving public health advice of washing hands and not spreading rumors and misinformation. They employ the song to cultivate empathy and compassion, while equally stressing the importance of embracing health prevention measures. On the African continent, poets, song composers, singers, musicians are also contributing to global mobilization against the COVID-19 pandemic. And some of them are medical students, anthropologists, historians, and tailors in many creative domains. And their health messages are reaching out not only to an audience of millions within their nations on the continent, but also to their fans located around the world who access their works through the digital platform. Added to their effectiveness in health messaging, their songs are in African languages and political discourses that articulate the intersectionality between culture and health belief system, health disparity, political and economic dynamism. Their COVID-19 songs are literary, what I call literary public culture that expand democratic political spheres by bringing oppositional and or marginal political discourses to challenge the political elite monopoly of power and economic resources at the expense of the majority of citizens. So because of time, there are many songs that I try to analyze, but I will just go to a few of them. African COVID-19 song embedded social commentaries in the form of satire, as I show in the PowerPoint, and annunciated those, denouncing the political elite responsibilities for the implementation of socially harmful neoliberal policies such as structural adjustment programs that have resulted in the dismantling of African public health system, a reality that the COVID-19 pandemic unveils. Some African COVID songs are encoded spiritual and cosmological beliefs that health workers need to understand in order to adequately assess the negative or positive impact of cultural cosmology and spirituality, or the ways that communities welcome public health and medical interventions, as well as their preparedness to embrace government public health policies. So, another example of a multilingual COVID-19 song, this one from a coalition of artists from Niger, which I showed, entitled Coronavirus, features Hausa, Sonrai, Tamajek, French, male and female singers, and hip-hop rappers. Given the level of anxiety and the fear triggered by the coronavirus pandemic, the artists begin first with a spiritual framing of their message as they warn their interlocutors of the new global pandemic for which there is as yet no medical cure. Aware of community's strong attachment to religious piety as a source of comfort, the song opens with a stanza from a Sufi Islamic spiritual perspective by invoking a hadith commonly used by devout Muslims in times of distress, such as this coronavirus pandemic moment, with the equated with the prophet stating that God has not made a disease without conceiving a remedy for it, with the exception of one disease, old age. This is a spiritual call to believers within their cultural Islamic framework not to despair, for a cure is on the way. Then in a multilingual, code-switching dialogue narrative style, each singer advised his or her audience in his local African language to follow the public health precaution recommended by the health workers, as they thank the latter for their life-saving service and beseech the divine to protect their own lives. In short, the lyrics of their song point to the following vernacular references: spiritual consolation in the face of calamity, gratitude to health workers, and health messaging that promote health and behavioral changes in the fight against the COVID-19 pandemic. In addition, their message called for Muslim behavioral changes in their ritual and, of greetings and communal gatherings. I had hard time, I'm a hugger, so when I saw that, I'm like, okay, Ousseina, you have to rethink your own practices, you see. Again, I want to see how the time, okay. So I just want to say a few words as in conclusion, because it's almost past time, that really it's important for us to bring comparative epistemologies in whatever languages, in whatever script. There is a body of knowledge produced by Africans. This one not only within the university walls, within communities that need to be integrated. So thank you. Peace and happy holidays. Thank you. Thank you, sister. Thank you.